This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Welcome to the Community Preservation Act Committee for December 19th, 2024. Before we begin, committee members can introduce themselves. I am Scott Kavanaugh. I'm the chair of the committee and I'm the mayor's appointee.
Hi, Ken.
Oh, Ken, I'm back here from the planning department.
Jessica Allen, City Council President appointee.
Jay Ryan, Conservation Commission representative.
Greg Rowland, City Council appointee.
All right. And Bill. Oh, and Joe's here. And Joe, introduce yourself.
Oh, he's muted.
He's muted.
Can you unmute yourself, Joe?
Okay, Joe McCoy, Easthampton Housing Authority appointee.
Thank you. Approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Is it?
Anybody have any discussion before approving?
No.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstain? Opposition? All right, we got you got you. He's
He's all gone.
He's done.
We've got a planning director.
Oh,
No more
okay.
people to see.
Great. I mean, although we'll miss him, but
Yeah.
great. But that means you're taking that.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so 6-0. Public speak. If anybody's here to speak about anything other than the two projects that are on the agenda, the Stacy Top and Old Town Hall. This is your time. All right. City officials during communication from the
No.
city. Nothing. All right. Not for there. All right. And Tom's not here for city council. Account balances and open project updates. Pull that up. I'm sorry you have to do both. You got two computers. That's key.
Okay. So they are in your packet as well.
I just want to say thank you, Ethan, for putting this together and making it clear to understand.
And for reinvigorating the share drive. That was helpful.
Yes.
Right.
Great.
And then-
Okay.
Rhoda.
Yeah, not too much has changed. The committee recalls that last meeting, the committee voted to approve pickleball, bringing the open space balance down to $1,949. Historic preservation remains at the $110.01. And affordable housing, currently, if 11 Ferry Street as planned is paid out of the affordable housing set aside, it will be at $914. Undesignated is at $649 and $649,615. And the reserve fund is at $450,000. If you look below the available balances before earmarks, the last section shows money that has been discussed, including the Safe Harbor Reserve. That one I may move that up. I don't know. It's a little hard. Depends on where the committee wants it for clarity. The earmark for Old Town Hall has not been voted on. 11 Ferry Street for fiscal 26 has been voted on by this committee, but is not going to be funded out of this year. And then the Safe
Say
Harbor.
that one more time. I'm sorry. 11 Ferry Street.
11 Ferry Street for fiscal 26 has been voted on by this committee, but is not going to be appropriated this year.
For FY25, we have already paid that.
No. It has not made it through, it hasn't gone through finance and city council. Which
No money has been given to Ferry Street yet.
100,000 has.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
That was
the-
this year.
No,
right?
that was fiscal 24.
There are three pieces.
Right, I thought they were
The first
consecutive.
part has made it all the way through. The second part is out of our committee and on to city, but has not made it through the process for the fiscal 25 piece. And what's showing here is the fiscal 26 piece. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, right.
Yeah.
Fiscal 25 is is separately on here. That's what I was getting
Yep.
at.
Yeah, we separated them out.
Good, thank you. All right. Anything else?
In that Old Town Hall, February 2024 item, which fiscal year does that relate to?
So that was a discussion based on the committee during the budgeting session for fiscal 25, where the committee discussed leaving the money in the reserve fund, leaving the money that in previous years the committee had been setting aside, had been earmarking for Old Town Hall and appropriating to Old Town Hall, leaving those funds in the reserve fund to be potentially set aside, appropriated this year, should the committee decide to do that.
So that's the fiscal 25 year mark.
That would be the fiscal 25 year mark. No money has been appropriated to Old Town Hall in fiscal 25.
Can we just, I have a question about the 11 Ferry Street,
Yeah,
because we are in FY 25.
yes,
Or about halfway through FY 25.
yes.
So when will that process start for council?
Yeah, my plan was to do it with, I can do it with the second quarter appropriation. So if the committee decides to fund another appropriation tonight, that I can do it with this session, or I can do it with third quarter.
So we need to take another vote on that, on the second chunk, like the 200 for FY 25, or did we already as a committee
No,
voted for
No,
it?
so, but I have to bring it to finance committee
Oh, okay,
and city
okay,
council. So
all right.
I was just,
You were gonna batch it with the
I was gonna
second
batch
quarter.
it, exactly. It was
Understood.
my understanding in the past, that was how the CPA administrator
Okay.
did it, that she would batch them.
Yep.
When possible, though I
Yep.
know the committee did it on a
Okay,
rolling
understood,
funding basis.
understood. Yep, okay, makes sense.
1140, 11 Ferry has been a little bit unusual too, because we basically approved chunk, like 3 different chunks simultaneously. So we really have never done that before. Hi, John.
Welcome, John.
Thanks.
Can you just clarify the difference between the reserve fund
Yeah,
and the safe harbor reserve?
great question. So the reserve fund is essentially the undesignated fund that was budgeted. So that was the money that was budgeted in the fiscal 25 budget that is not put in one of the set asides. Versus the undesignated is the rollover funds from last year, as well as additional funds that were not budgeted. So
Got it.
the committee always budgets a very conservative estimate based on what they believe revenue will be.
Got it. So if we didn't spend another dollar until next July, and before we got more money from the city, the undesignated would essentially become 529. Like that 200 would move over. Looking at that bottom line, that would move over to undesignated.
It depends on how the committee decides to budget. I think it all depends on what the fiscal 26 budget looks like in terms of what makes its way into the reserve fund and what makes its way into the undesignated fund. And we're all gonna learn that together.
Got it. Perfect. To put it another way, both those buckets are available to fund projects this fiscal year.
Yes, particularly if you look at the bottom line, right?
That's what I'm really looking at. Like we don't want to, we know we, in the discussion that we had last winter, or whenever that was, with Hadel, that we don't want to go, the safe harbor reserve is something we want to have in there. But those, it's a little different from how it looked. And I think it might be an improvement, but it's a little different from how it looked a year ago, having both those buckets, but essentially they're effectively the same thing as far as when we're thinking about the money that we have available for projects this fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I looked at past years, it doesn't seem like as the committee used the reserve fund.
Not that
As
terminology,
often.
and so it,
Right.
It's specifically a budget item.
Item.
So if you look at the the top section, the second line, that entire line is the budget. It's what was approved. As you'll recall, we, do make some sort of assessment of what the conservative amount is and, 10% for open space and so forth. So you see the identical amounts in open space, historic preservation, affordable housing, and the balance of that that's budgeted falls in that reserve column. And so if you go to the total on the right, you see the administrative budget of 24,000 and the total budget for this year is 804. And that's what we back in February for this fiscal year.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay.
Which, from an administrative perspective, would the committee like to begin budgeting process? I think last year the budget process was one meeting, was just the February meeting. Is that something the committee would like to begin earlier in January? Is essentially my question.
I'm not sure how much new information happens between, say, like January and February or whatever. I didn't feel like we were behind the 8 ball necessarily with our February budget approval. I don't know how other people feel. I could do it either January.
I agree with you. Not much is happening.
Okay. Great. We'll take a quick look at the open project balances as well. And I do have a couple notes. Per the committee's recommendation, I have begun reaching out to projects, namely the Emily Williston Library Historic Preservation Restriction. If we look at the open project balances, in terms of the ones in the red, which are the ones that have expired, that is the main one that is not a city project. And it sort of was it was sort of a hybrid city and non-city project. And so I reached out to the library board to see where they were at with that. I also felt like that was a good one to start with because they haven't touched their funds.
Yeah.
And it was from fiscal 22. They have also undergone some changes in leadership of their library board and are currently evaluating whether or not there's momentum to move on a historic preservation restriction. They expressed, so what they recalled, or like what had been passed through as institutional knowledge, is that the CPA had requested a historic preservation restriction due to, that CPA back in fiscal 2022 essentially said, we won't give you any more funds if you don't have a historic preservation restriction on the property. Okay, and so does the current CPA committee still stand by that?
Yeah, I think the concern was that we didn't want to give funds and then have the building be sold and gutted and essentially the investment that we made disappear.
That was the discussion, yes.
Yeah, move to a private owner
Yeah.
or something, because there was some uncertainty about the future of the library at the time.
Okay.
It continues.
Well, then I think what I will advise them to do, if they're amenable, is to return those funds to us now, but knowing that the committee would be interested in hearing another request for an appropriation for historic preservation funds at a time when they have the capacity.
Yeah, and I think also it was the planning department who decided to take on the leadership of drafting the
Right.
historic preservation restriction, running up, working with the attorney, coming up with the language. So
Right.
I think the work itself actually fell on the city.
Right.
Not the Emily Williston board.
Right.
And that work didn't happen. So I guess the bigger question is, and I have no idea the answer to this, but do they have plans for renovations of that building? What is their capital improvement plan? Like, if they don't plan to make any more capital improvements on it and don't plan to come back to the CPA, to me, it seems like not money worth spending.
Right.
Yeah.
If that's not in their game plan, but I have, no clue. And I don't know, maybe John is our historic
I agree
person.
with
Maybe
you.
you have any.
And that restriction was a way we felt we could meet the need to make it a public good, because otherwise it could just go into a private venture. So
Correct.
And I would, from what you said, sort of tweak that a little bit, potentially to say, not if they're amenable, but that as it's expired, we're doing that. we are open to them appearing at our next meeting and telling us why we shouldn't do that. And I think we'd be really receptive to hearing that.
Okay.
But absent of that, since it has already expired, it's coming back.
Sure, and they can go back at it again.
Totally. And obviously, I don't
With
think anyone
support of
here
the
is.
planning department.
Yeah.
I mean, if the
Right.
planning department is gonna step up and offer to provide that service for them and then not have the capacity themselves to do it, I think that's part of the conversation.
Okay. Do we want to give them a date, maybe 2 meetings out?
Sure, we can say February meeting.
Okay.
Sure. Right.
Were they going to move into the old Easthampton Savings Bank, or did that not happen? Or is that no longer on the plan?
I think it's still in the works.
But I think it's an annex.
Yeah, I think it's in addition.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So it wouldn't necessarily negate the need for this.
okay.
Hi, Mayor.
I apologize, I didn't know.
Okay, and I don't have any other updates. The only other open project balance that we have flagged to circle back on is around the Stonehouse bathroom design. And I believe we're gonna check in with John Mason in, I think you had him, I have it in my notes somewhere, but I think it's February, if he hasn't heard anything regarding the usage of the rest of those funds. So we'll revisit that in the spring.
Great.
And there were other funds he was gonna return as well. Was it was it the pool?
Yep, and he said by the end of this calendar year, so
Yep.
I'll return, if we don't see those funds, I'll return to that.
And so a reminder though, that the committee can't utilize these funds until next fiscal year, that they would be put into, I don't know what pot, undesignated or reserve or whatever the committee decides to budget for, but it's funds that we don't have access to this year.
Which is why it's imperative to make sure we do everything we can to get them
Absolutely.
back pre-budget,
Sure,
or
sure.
pre-June, I want to say thank you to Ava for moving this forward. This is definitely a priority of this committee. And it's nice to see momentum on this. So thank you for that. I also want to say thank you to, from Kyle. I was like, it's W Kyle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. From the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, who helped David, helped this committee a lot over the past few months and really helped us kind of with the transition. So I'd like to just have that on record before we move to projects. And the last thing before we move to the projects that I want to make sure we get in is that I want to thank Jessica Allen for her service on this committee. This is Jessica's last meeting. You brought so much knowledge, and the questions you ask are so informed and thoughtful, and we're really going to miss you on this committee. So thank you for everything, and I thank you not just for me and for this committee, but really for the city of Easthampton.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Not yet, people. Not dead yet.
Yeah. We're just pulling up the meeting dates. You don't want to do that yet?
Oh, we can.
Man.
Yeah, we can.
Let's do it at the end.
Okay.
All right. New business. First thing on the project is the project update on Old Town Hall and City Space. Burns. Are you? Yeah, City Space. There we go.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you this evening. I'm here to provide an update on the City Space project. Before I do that, is there any imminent questions that I can answer before I get started?
Go ahead.
Okay. I can't see your faces except for Joe, so if you could verbally reply, that would be really helpful. Do you mind if I present, Eva?
No, you should be good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. So where we left off was in 2023, in June 2023 for the phase 2 elevator and entryway. As you probably remember, the project came in at about 30% more than the estimated budget for the phase of the project. The average of the 4 low bids received was just over $3.1 million. And the proposed schedule is to put the project out to bid early again in early 2025, now that we've received the funding in place to put it out to bid. Within the goal of starting construction is for spring of 2025. Let's see here. As you remember, this is what the project is. It is the elevator and entryway, the phase 2 of the project to make the 150-year-old building accessible once again, for the first time actually ever. And the entryway will be on the side of the building as you're crossing the crosswalk, and you'll enter into the first floor, and the elevator will go to all floors of the building. The construction documents, just to give you an idea of the timeline for the project, the construction documents by Kuhn Riddle Architects and R. Hall Engineers should be complete within 4 to 6 weeks and ready for bidding in early February of 2025. Bidding is anticipated to take about 6 weeks and is estimated to complete in March or April. With an accepted contract in place with the lowest bidder, construction should be able to begin in May of 2025, and construction should take about 8 to 12 months, depending on when construction starts. With the additional $878,000 established by the CPA and released from the $3.5 million, in addition to a mass development award grant from the competitive underutilized properties grant of over $500,000, this is allowing us to go out to bid for phase 2. I did send Eva the information in regards to the grants we've received, and that show the funding that is in place for us to establish the CPA contract and move forward with phase 2. We're really excited to do this. It's been a long time coming, and we had that setback with the unexpected additional cost of the project in 2023. And we're going to try this again, put it out to bid. And we've talked to our Kuhn Riddle Architects, Alon Tierney, principal over there, to establish that we are in a good place for moving forward. This gives you an idea of the bidding process. With phase 2, while we're in the midst of phase 2, we are working on establishing the funding for phase 3. We have an economic development bond bill that has gone through with the state leadership and is awaited on the governor's desk for $1.5 million. And we have a federal earmark of $3.5 million that is in place for phase 3. So we are working for the additional funding to get that out to bid as we are in construction with phase 2. And that's essentially the crux. I know that we've presented this project numerous times, and I believe that the CPA committee and their generosity towards this city-owned historic building, the Old Town Hall, is so incredibly important to getting us to this next phase of the project. And, you know, we couldn't do this without you, obviously. And it's just an exciting place to be in.
Thank you. Questions, committee?
I guess my question really has to do with the contract and what's changing in terms of if somebody, I don't know if it's city or if Burns can explain why there's a new contract. I know everything's being combined into one document. So if you could just maybe review what the changes are against what we've previously done and what's just happening with this new grant agreement.
I can speak to that. Ava, you can speak to it as well. The 878,000, that contract was not finalized when that was established in last fall. So we need that contract in place, as well as an additional increase in the timeline. So the contract needs to reflect that the construction will end. I believe, Ava, we decided it would be the end of 2026 would be the expiration date of it.
End of the fiscal year. It looked
Yeah,
like.
June 30th, 2026.
Yeah.
And Burns, you think that's enough time for that phase to complete? We're not going to run.
I do. We'll be expending those funds quickly. So it's, it is the CPA, as well as the Mass Development Grant, as well as the $200,000 Massachusetts Cultural Council Cultural Facilities Fund grant will be the first to be expended.
Well, this is a long-standing project that the committee has supported. It's a really important project for the city. We appreciate you coming back and kind of reviewing it with us. And I just want to say thank you for your good work. It's been a long haul with some, ups and downs. But, on my part, I support this project 100%.
Agreed.
One question, and Mayor, thank you for coming. One question I know that came up was there was a request to extend that came from you, and I guess we wanted to understand what the process was that or how that came about. Yeah, do you mind? Thank you.
The request, actually, Burns covered the request. So with two different documents, what the city requested is that it becomes a clear one document, and that there is an extension of that just to make sure it's covered and there's not a need for City Space to come back, or honestly, with the next administration, there's any confusion. Clearly, the city supports this project 120%. Really excited to see the $500,000 and change come through. That's great. And the budget, as far as the for phase 2, the gap of the 750, and is that still on the table? Is there a $250,000 grant or gap? I'm sorry, $250,000 gap now that only $500,000 has been received? Not that the city cares or not. It's more that we want it to be reflected in the document. So our auditor and compliance officer is very clear about what money from the CPA can be in the door for money to be released to this project as these grant contracts come in. And a question of what the changes of conditions would be by this committee, if there were any level of comfort. And then the last condition around establishing a procedure before money is dispersed with the auditor and our chief compliance officer, because the city will oversee the money because we have an investment, and that's on advice of the city attorney. So it's more about just our request is clarification, making sure that there is an appropriate timeline extension and in an updated budget, and the auditor and compliance officer asks for a meeting to happen after the holidays. If that timeline worked for City Space, because we weren't sure like what contracts have been signed, what needed to be done by the city or anything we had to sign to make sure that the grant contracts were received and executed quickly. So bid could go out as well as everyone knew how the procedure would go for reimbursement. This project in the past has worked on a reimbursement model. Like, it's not new, it's not complicated. It's about just getting things in order, and the auditor and chief compliance officer just had questions about the amount of money and putting it into order.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
I do have a question. So, and maybe, I don't know who can answer this, but this whole appropriation is not available in cash. So some of it has to go out and be bonded, correct? Is that true? For what?
The
No,
whole
No,
amount
not
in-
right now.
not right now.
The
Okay.
whole amount in the project funding agreement, which
Yes.
I can project,
Yes.
is the $2.128 million, which is reflective of two previous appropriations that the CPA committee had appropriated, one for 1.25 and one for 878.
Some of that was,
It's a separate bond authorization,
it was a separate one.
separate from these appropriations.
Okay, so this is
Which is
available.
also still out there. We have not tapped the bond authorization. We may or may not. But it's,
So the money that City Space needs to build phase 2 is in hand, and no bonding authorization needs to happen in order for them to move forward.
Is that true, Burns?
That is my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure
Previously-
there wasn't a bond authorization process that needed to happen before City Space went out to bid, and to make sure that those funds were secure.
No, I mean,
Okay.
my expectation would be, I mean, there's already a budget for phase 3. Phase 2 bids are awarded, and just because of the length to get the bond going.
Right, yeah.
We would start, like, when bids are in and construction starts, like, we would start on the remaining, I think it's $1.1 million or whatever it is. That other or option out there, which CPA has done in the past, in your next budget will choose, and I'm not looking for an answer, but if you put aside more cash, and I don't know, I know you guys have put out a lot of money for a lot of things, and I'm very grateful. But the question would be, is there any money that you put aside for this project, and we would subtract that from the bonding amount?
Yep.
But regardless, the agreement to bond is there regardless. Like,
Okay, I just
And-
wanted to make sure that
yeah.
the timing was okay with their bidding process, and that there wasn't any additional city council action that needed to happen that is tied to
No.
bonding that would delay anything. I think Burns is trying to say something. Yeah.
My understanding is you have the cash on hand for this phase of the project.
Yeah, and if we look,
Perfect.
it was gonna pull up if you look at the open project balances, this is in there for 2.1 million.
Yep.
Already approved in
In cash.
taken out of our budget already. Yeah.
and
In those 250 segments that we've done over the
That's
past.
separate.
That's what built one,
Yeah.
that's what built
Oh,
the
yes,
1.25
that's what, yeah,
million
that's what.
over many years.
Okay.
So this request for the project is a bit unusual for us in that typically we're approving new money. This is approving something to to get it in
It's
line with
administrative, yeah.
administrative in the way that the mayor just explained. And so,
yeah, the bond council will ask for a document. I mean, that's kind of a secondary reason why we're asking for a combined document that updates everything. I don't know who has the answer, but there is and I saw it on the budget, $24,000. The timeline and use of that money is for design, and the city would request, and I don't think Burns would disagree. We would love to see that money reclassified into phase 2. And in doing that, not to take away from the bond, but just to capture that money very clearly for phase 2 and it not being designed. The auditor and compliance officer flagged that as not to deny that money, but they just wanted to see it reclassified out of a design category and into construction and supporting bid. And I'm not sure that's in this.
I was gonna say, is that in there already?
Would you like that? You would like that in this current project
I
funding
would.
agreement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it is not subtracted from like the original commitment of 3.5. Just we don't want to give it back.
If I may share our budget again too, I can show you. So you can see here that CPA accounts, that's accounted for right here. So it was originally this much, and that was has some of that has been expended towards design, and so that is part of this project. We do need some design funds, but obviously if it's can go towards construction, if there is additional funds, that's very helpful as well.
And if it goes towards, there's still design to be done that's not directly connected to construction. We would, again, city's not trying to reclaim any money or asking you to reclaim money. We would ask that the dates on that design money are updated if they need to be, or or extended. And
To be in line with the other expenses.
yeah, I mean, that would be great. Is there, one, compliance would like to see that, procurement, I think the compliance part would like to see that because it's just neat and tidy. We would also like to show bond council that the city is committed and every dollar, I mean, you guys have already put a lot of money aside, but every dollar would be just helpful that, you know, we're involved. And we can show that on our balance sheet for the project. The other is once the construction bid is awarded, we would start the bonding process. One, it takes a little time. Two, there are a couple of options and we would look at that as far as the best interest rate. And we want to be able to get CPA, the bonding amount, because it does go towards any new money and it's the first money out, which is considered in the budget. And, you know, it's not a surprise. And in fact, I believe it will be less than Jamie budgeted as before she left. So again, no surprises, no shortfalls, just getting the paperwork in place to go forward as fast as possible.
Thank you.
And I can confirm that that money would be expended in phase 2 easily.
Yeah.
Can I just ask about that money, or actually just the presentation of those dollars on the budget here? There's the 24,690 in the right-hand column, and then what is the 37,760 that's beside it, that's unlabeled?
Is that design?
That's what it was. So originally, and well, it was design funds that were for an initial point in the project for early preliminary designs of the restoration of the second floor. And it has essentially, we had additional funds left over. So it's continued on into this phase 2 now, but we've expended that to reduce it to the 24,000 there, so that it is only 24,690. So that is what is left. And to my understanding, based on CPA minutes, which are so helpful, that we can look back at those, that the CPA committee agreed in, I I believe in 2022 to allow those to be used for the design phase of phase 2.
Okay, so if I just understand correctly, there was an allocation of 37,760. Some of that has been expended. What's remaining is the 24,690. Is that correct?
Correct. So that budget there was to show like the full cost of the project, and we've expended some already as part of the initial phases or the initial 2022 phase 2 a design portion of the project before we went out to bid.
Okay, thank you. I think it is appropriate for us to explicitly repurpose the design money. So I don't know what that requires as far as a vote and so forth, but
Well, I think we would need to vote there is a application to that we can amend that application as part of the motion to move the,
To like amend the original project funding agreement to a new project funding agreement.
because this is the,
Here, let me pull it up.
this was what was submitted for this meeting.
Or
Right.
I wrote.
You wrote,
but
okay.
I haven't added the design funds though.
Although they're in there, right? Or no, they're not in there.
They're right here
They're
on the side.
on the side. Yeah. So,
there's the sum of those two.
right, so
There.
it's approving this language and approving
Right.
the remaining design funds be moved to the, what is it? The total CPA funds granted for construction. Right?
Yep.
That,
Makes sense, yeah.
So do we have a total of
I'd be calling on you to make the motion.
Oh, well.
21,552, 690?
That's what I'm
Is that
saying.
somewhere
That's
around
right.
there?
So we'll make so the total CPA funds granted will include the 37,000 appropriated, not just the remaining.
Gotcha.
Is that true? I'm not
Um,
actually sure.
Say it again.
Will the total CPA funds, okay. The total CPA funds granted will be the remaining design funds.
Correct.
Which is like-
Not the previous, because it's been spent. That's the only thing
Right.
that has been spent.
Right.
Yeah. So it'd actually be the, whatever the subtracted number.
Mhm.
Do you have that? Craig, you have that? pulled up?
Well, I'm just looking, it's 21,552, 690.
It's on here.
But I just think it should be we should be explicit that that's the dollar amount.
Yep.
Because I don't think it's spelled out on it.
No.
So.
Right.
So,
Right, 24,690.
Yep, it's on it's right here.
All right. So you-
But I'll move it over.
Okay.
But that's
Got
the dollar amount. So someone should say it in the motion.
so I move to approve the project funding agreement, the combined project funding agreement for phase 2 for Old Town Hall. That will include the remaining balance of the design funds of $24,690.47 for a total of $2,152,690.47.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Excellent.
Thanks, John.
All right.
And Joe
Thank
said
you.
I too.
And Joe said I.
And Joe,
Yeah.
so we got 7-0. There you go.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Birds.
Thanks, Burns.
Thank you, Burns.
Thank you.
I will keep you in the loop as we move along.
Good luck with the
Excellent.
bidding process.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Brent, you should expect this project funding agreement and grant contract once it's all executed through the city.
Okay. That sounds great. Thank you so much for your help, and I look forward to moving forward for the bid.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Continued business, take up affordable housing application. Thank you for coming back. You know, we had a lot of questions from the committee and from the public last time. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Sure, yeah, no, I have to admit, I think there was some technical difficulties with your recording. So when I went back to it to kind of, you know, I believe I got most of the responses or most of the things to respond to. You know, I think generally speaking, just as a recap, this is the request for $100,000, which is the equivalent of about $2,500 or $2,700 a unit of affordable housing that would have a 50-year plus deed restriction on it. And as far as some of the comments from the public that I'm looking to try to respond to that came up, you know, one of the things, traffic was one, and that was discussed at length with the planning board, and understandably so, people are concerned. The state highway at the end of the day has the control over that, and there have been the approvals that were done were with regards to as the phase development happens and as the different needs occur, there are different triggers that would create further traffic mitigation and all, which has to be approved ahead of time, as it was and was with DOT. A comment about town not having sufficient funds to give a private developer resources. That one combined with, you know, a large commercial developer getting tax breaks, doesn't need the funds. And there's a few that all kind of have the same response. So I just want to kind of let people know I'm, you know, looking at each of these. CPA funds should be given to rehabbing existing housing or should go to the 3 schools. Comment about you know, private developer, not sure why they need this money, against the private developer making money. So to all of those broadly, I just want to kind of try to make a, you know, number one, this award leverages over $18 million of state funds. So it is, whether it's a private developer, and this was another question somebody asked about, does it make a difference if it's a nonprofit or for-profit? And it does not in the eyes of the state. It just does. So the vast majority, I guess 99% of the state and federal supported programs for creating affordable housing is with private organizations, whether they be a nonprofit, which of course a nonprofit has a local board, and sometimes the nonprofits tend to put the money back in the community. But at the end of the day, the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit in getting the real estate built is very much the same. It's a risk business. And when it comes to the financial incentives of these deals, the competitive state process governs how much fee and overhead the developer can make, whether it be a for-profit or a nonprofit. So I just want to, I mean, there are a lot of eyes on these deals to make sure that nobody is running away with funds. And it's a big reason why this is a public-private partnership, why throughout the whole country, this is how it's done.
Can I just add something to that? Yeah. So just to represent, I think, one person who spoke at the last meeting, specifically the concern was the anti-aid amendment, which is pertains to the Community Preservation Act and allocation of funds. And the anti-aid amendment is a safeguard by the state to protect Community Preservation Act dollars from going to specifically private benefit. And I think that was the concern. I'm not sure there was a full understanding about the anti-aid amendment. We didn't really get into explaining it in the last meeting because there was a long meeting and there was a lot on the table. But just for the record, the anti-aid amendment allows for funding of public, nonprofit, and private when there is a public interest involved. So you can have a privately owned historic building that receives historic preservation funds from the Community Preservation Act, for instance. that's okay. There's a public, and if it's an interior space that no one has access to, that's not okay. There's nobody's able in the public to enjoy or benefit from that. But I just want to clarify that there is that was, an issue that was brought up. I think that was part of the question that you're responding to, but just to flush that out a little bit.
That's right, yeah.
So the committee doesn't have any issue with awarding dollars to a private organization when there is a clear public benefit. We're allowed to do that. So.
I mean, and that dovetails to, again, the public benefit being development of affordable housing that has a deed restriction, over and above what is even required from the CPA or even the planning board's requirements. What will be built will have a deeper, stronger restriction than what was requested. And that does sum it up. It basically, it becomes a public good. What is using these dollars to leverage more for the public good is actually a very big bang for the buck. So yeah, I wanted, to end with, to simply say that development creates some sorely needed affordable housing. And again, this is only usually done by private or public and private partnerships. As far as the schools, I think the schools are a private developer as well. It's a similar, but again, a very good public benefit to see existing properties reused into affordable housing. Another comment I wanted to respond to, as far as, caveats or promises that the apartments wouldn't be used as Airbnb or dormitory. The restrictions that come from the state cover that. These are the compliance and monitoring that happens with these. First of all, you have to be, income qualify, owner or, renter occupied, so that is covered in that respect. Another comment was about the CPA funds prohibiting them. This is to the private entities here, to what you kind of mentioned. And again, our application was completely in keeping with what is eligible from the criteria that has been laid out by the CPA and the state. But that kind of broadly covers the questions that were out there. And I didn't know if the committee had any other specific questions or not.
One question I just want to clarify. I feel like it came up in the last meeting as far as when would there be an expectation of returning to the committee to ask for additional fund?
I did. I missed. I glossed over that.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, the question was, since this is multi-phase, is the 100,000 spread over a multi-year period? With the idea, what we're saying is we anticipate to come back for additional requests as the phases go, right? So people had asked about why the arbitrary, why 100,000 versus 500,000. So that I looked at it in a per unit basis, and we need the commitment. The funds go to the deed restricted housing. Between some of the other committee awarded projects, between 5,000 and 6,000 or 7,000 a unit. This is 2,700 a unit. And the idea being as well that our request, a lot of times CPA money is critically important for pre-development work, early money in to allow folks to kind of, get the environmental review done and things like that. We're requesting it at the completion. So the buildings will be built. We'll have 100% completed before we get the money, which I think is, again, in an effort to kind of, put our money where the mouth is. And then when we come back for the next one, we'll have had a track record. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back before we're completed with the first phase, because these things take so long, and you want to basically have the process going with the city, going with as your other building is being built with state funded dollars.
So I just want to make sure this is accurate in how it's represented. $100,000, you said earlier, would unlock potentially 18 million of additional funds, state funds. Is that just for phase one?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the
Like that 18 million
18 million is the
going to
36.
those 36
That's right.
affordable housing units.
That's right. It has become.
I'm not, okay. So when you're talking about potentially coming back to the committee,
That would be
that would be for
phase
additional
two.
funds to leverage additional state
additional,
money,
exactly.
which would be for additional affordable housing units.
That's right. Yeah.
Can we just pull up the budget from their CPA application packet? I just want to, I think it would be benefit for the committee, maybe others, to sort of walk through a couple of points, just to sort of show some stuff. It's on page 15 of their application, so it's their sources and uses. And just wanted to highlight a couple of things on that. Oh, it gets pulled up on the screen. If you could make at least the sources piece a little bit bigger. Awesome. Fantastic. So just to walk through a couple things. So the LIHTC equity in the state LIHTC, that's the low income housing tax credit. That's what LIHTC acronym means. Okay. That's all private investment. That's insurance companies, that's banks, that's the private industry putting their money into the deal. So that is private industry, okay? The HLC soft debt, the 3.7, that's essentially, those are state grants that are coming in from the state to support the project. Developer equity, $344,000, that's money coming from the developer himself. That's money that they're putting into the deal, and you notice that's 3 times the amount of being asked from CPA. And then the perm loan is $1.7 million, which is a permanent mortgage that they will have to pay over 30 years. And when you craft these deals, you try not to have perm loan. Like it just can impact your operating budget because it's a mortgage payment that you have to pay every day out of rent incomes that are lower than what you would pull in from market rate. So I just want to point out for the committee, just kind of translate this a little bit, that the developer himself is putting in 3 times what is being requested from the CPA. And that there's a perm loan that will be carried on these 2 buildings of $1.7 million over 30 years or whatever the mortgage ends up being. So in the green scheme of things, the $100,000 is a small amount for the city to add to a project that, for a location that was zoned for affordable housing. You know, this area, chapter 40R, the city has had 40R on the books for almost 20 years. This site was added not that long ago. So even just crafting the zoning and putting zoning in place on this parcel is trying to attract developers to come and build affordable housing. He certainly didn't have to build affordable housing. He certainly could have gone with the base zone. 40R is optional. So we have somebody who's willing to take the risk to build affordable housing. It's complicated, so complicated, had to hire a consultant to do it. It's not something that everybody can do. So I just want to, like, big picture, that I know there's concerns about a private developer coming in, but there's a lot of skin in the game from the private developer as well, and from private industries, and to build this, and that it's much different than building market rate. And he certainly could have come in and just built market rate, and we could have had rents of $2,500 for a 1-bed. But that's not what's happening. So I'm very much in support of this, but I just wanted to kind of translate this budget for the committee a little bit so that you can understand that if there's a lot of people with a lot of skin in the game for this.
Thanks for that clarification. I didn't know half that stuff. So thank you.
And that's why she's staying on.
I'll make a motion that.
No, you will not.
Questions, comments from the committee?
I appreciate it. Could I just ask one question about what you went through, which is the perm loan piece, because I'm a finance guy. So who's on the loaning? Who loans the perm loan?
I don't know what bank you're going
One
with.
thing, that's one of the things is, so with the equity, oftentimes the we're going to give an advertisement for TD Bank here, but you know, the equity player may want to have the perm loan, may insist on it, right?
Sure.
But sometimes that's not the case. So we you know, the deals that are in this structure have worked with Greenfield Savings, have worked with Easthampton, have worked with Florence Bank, People's Bank more recently. There's a lot of benefit to bringing a local bank in They get benefit for their Community Reinvestment Act, separate from the CPA. It's another community-driven program. So the lending, the underwriting of the deal, the heaviest underwriting is done by the equity partners because they essentially own the deal for 15 years as part of that equity. Furthermore, finance guy, they get to write off all the expenses and everything. So it's a very detailed structure. And then the perm loan, again, just as just said.
Currently, it's Florence Bank.
Florence Bank, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Just to make sure, just to clarify kind of what we said before we were saying $100,000 is unlocking 18. I think the way it was said before was sort of 18 million of state money. Really, it's
right. It's 18
unlocking,
million of development.
Close to 6 million of state money, which is essential. LIHTC, that equity is not going to come without the state match. Just to,
Exactly.
I just wanted to be
You're
clear
absolutely
that it's
right.
public and private money that is unlocked.
The development cost is 18 million. That's what it's unlocking.
And the understanding is that's not going to happen without
right, local commitment.
Thank you.
Especially the HLC money.
Yeah.
They absolutely insist that.
And HLC is the one who gives the state LIHTC and the federal LIHTC allocation. So they don't give the money, but they award you the ability to get that money.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
No, absolutely. For
this room and
transparency.
anybody listening at home is clear on that.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions from the committee? Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody from the public that would like to speak on this project? You can come on.
Yes, I would. I have a question.
Sorry, we have someone at the
Oh, I'm
podium, but then we'll, if you raise your
Sorry.
digital hand there, we'll make sure you get a chance to speak as well. Thank you.
Kathy Wazinski, Overlook Drive. I would once again ask the CPA committee to not approve this $100,000. I do not believe that we need to be using city taxpayer funds to support a developer. We don't need to be supporting their profits. A good majority of the city doesn't want this development to begin with. And this, combined with the many other housing projects that are being forced upon this city, is going to be more detrimental than beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Online, where are we? Patty C. You're up.
Thank you. Yes. I was the one that brought up the comment about not being allowed to use CPA for private funds, private companies. And I'm not sure I still understand how you can say that this is for the public use, because as I understand it, yes, it is low income housing, but the rent that this developer will get will be fair market. The tenants will not pay fair market, but Section 8 will reimburse the difference. So I'm not sure I understand that comment from either the board or the developer. In my opinion, it's still a private organization that's going to profit. And for his comment about non-profit, I've been on non-profit boards. No way are nonprofits the same as profits. No way. And I've been on nonprofit boards for many, many, many years. Also, I went through the criteria again of the CPA agreement because I, as a taxpayer, do not like the fact that I'm helping fund a private company. I'm more for nonprofits. I will give to nonprofits till I'm blue in the face, but I have a problem. I don't have a problem with private companies, but it's not my job to work every day to pay my tax dollars to benefit for their profit. So I went through the criteria of all the criteria for grant approvals in your agreement. And there are 21 criterias there. Let me get my notes. And 14 are not met. So that's 67% are not met. The criteria not met for this developer. I do not understand how you are even considering this. It's not assisting open space. It's not helping historic buildings, and it's only meeting 2 of the criteria in the community housing. ensures long-term to permanent deed restrictions. It does that and demonstrates energy efficiency and sustainable building practices and designs. But it is not harmonious in design and scale with the surrounding community, because it's not. Those buildings do not jive with our neighborhood. And it does not redevelop or reuse existing buildings or underutilized vacant sites on previously developed land, which that's your criteria. That's the criteria I, as a taxpayer, voted for the CPA. I want our money to be used for its intended purposes, not for the benefit of private companies. I really wish you'd reconsider this and utilize our money. There are buildings downtown. There are many vacant buildings. Use this money wisely. Low-income housing, absolutely. Help these poor people, help the public. But let's utilize Easthampton to its fullest capacity. Stop building more buildings until we use what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And I just want to clarify one thing. We, as a committee, the point about whether, not whether it was the preference, but whether it was actually allowed, but like legally by the committee, is something that we looked into in response to your comment. And that was what Greg was responding to earlier.
I agree, but I believe you're playing with words, and I've been in court many times, and it's challenging of words, and lawyers will give you what you want to hear, but in the end, it's a judge that will decide. And I believe we're playing with words here, because it is a private company. Yes, it is for a public purpose, but in the end, this company will get they'll get the money. They're going to end up with a profit. Let's be honest, okay? Let's be honest. They are not in this to lose money. They are in it to gain. They are in it to profit. And I, as a taxpayer, am not busting my ass every day at work so that I can benefit a private company. I'll do that when I shop or I utilize their services. But I, as a taxpayer, don't want my tax dollars. I want to make that decision personally, not you as counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie.
Okay. Hi there. I'm Jackie Brusso Pereira, Garfield Avenue, Easthampton. Also a member of Easthampton's Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership for the past, almost 20 years. You all know that I'm going to say that the Easthampton Housing Partnership is in support of this project, thinks it's a great use of CPA money. Also, one of the things I want to point out for the folks on the CPA committee, I have been, talking about affordable housing for a long time and learning about it and et cetera. It's hard. We have many times said, and Jess Allen, as our former planner, will know this, that it's really hard to get private developers to want to build affordable housing because it's super complicated. It's very expensive to build. And you don't just build it and walk away. Like, it comes with additional work all the time. So our friend over here, Frank, is willing to build affordable housing and have someone make sure that all the people in those units are income qualified to be there. They have to run a lottery to make sure that they're going to have more people who want to live there than can actually be there. So they're going to have to run the system to get the people in the housing. They're going to have to make sure that people are constantly income verified to be there. That requires more than just building the housing and walking away from it. I also want to just point out that we have given other things, other CPA grants to other for-profit companies. I don't think that's the issue. And what the public good is here is that 36 families are going to have housing that they can afford. And like I said, it's been very challenging to get private developers to understand how to do this kind of thing. So I applaud your efforts in trying to do this. It's really appreciated. And the amount that they're asking for, frankly, is a lot smaller than we've seen from other developers who have come in. And I also just want to point out or ask to clarify, CPA funds actually come from fees from real estate transactions, not like it's not housing, it's not tax on something else. It's fees from real estate transactions. So when we think about where they come from, right?
It's a tax. It's a combination. So there is a local surcharge on property values over 100,000 in the city of Easthampton, and those are matched at a certain percentage by state funds that come from registry of deeds fee transactions.
I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's just helpful to know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on.
Hi, I'm Donna Chappello. I am a resident at 116 Pleasant Street in Eastworks. I'm also a member of the Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership, but I'm not going to repeat what Jackie said. I'll speak for myself personally, and I would say that I am in favor of the project and in favor of affordable housing here in Easthampton. And I think I've spoken with you before to explain my reasons for that. Which include, having family members who can't afford to buy a house, and also working as an attorney and seeing the effect that housing or housing instability has on individuals. So when folks have stable housing, they're more likely to be able to be law-abiding citizens. I think that's something that's in the public good. When people do not have stable housing, that's when they fall into issues related to poverty and crime, drugs, that kind of thing. And I've seen that individually in my practice with folks. Housing was one of the #1 issues that we dealt with. And it was one of the hardest issues that we dealt with because there was not affordable housing for people, particularly people who lack skills and are struggling to get by on minimum wage jobs. So I'm in favor of affordable housing. I'm in favor of it at this location. And I will ask the committee again to, and the developer to just be aware of the lighting as they're building so that it's not impacting on shining into my unit in Eastworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on.
Darlene Orvieto, Cherry Street. Worried about the lighting, just wait. There's going to be a lot more to worry about. I would just ask the committee that I don't necessarily, it doesn't sound to me like anybody is against affordable housing. I don't like the fact that Easthampton is, becoming this place, well, who can afford to live here? I mean, some of the prices on houses are crazy. I would like to see a good, diverse community, diverse in many ways, but also financially diverse. I think you really have to look at what are the criteria that are being met because I think Patty had a great point. It's not about not wanting the affordable housing, not wanting to use these funds to be there, but like she said, and I know this point was poo-pooed by, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but they don't lose out. Okay, the Section 8 steps in, so they're making their money, and I wasn't aware it was hard to find a developer for this project. I'll definitely look into that. Sounds like it was hard to find a developer because nobody wants to do affordable housing. I wonder if that was the case. I don't know. Good question. But I would ask you to look at the criteria seriously because I agree very much with Patty that this is not really going to benefit the community as a whole. In fact, I think you'll find, based on what we've already found out, that the traffic and a lot of other factors are actually going to negatively affect our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just speak to this criteria piece? Because I just want to get some clarity. Is it reference to the plan itself, our CPA?
Yes.
I think
Okay. So my understanding is that a project doesn't need to meet every criteria
all the criteria.
on the list. That is not the intent.
Should meet most of them.
Not even.
Not even. So I think it's that you need to qualify as many as you can, but it doesn't, there's not enough, there's no set number in there saying you need to meet 3 out of whatever of these in order to apply for CPA funds. You just need to.
Your criteria states general criteria for all projects. I'm reading right now for your grant approval. Number 1 highlighted says serves multiple CPA purposes. Does not give a number, but it does, that's making an assumption that you are addressing and meeting a high percentage, or at least you're getting more criteria than not criteria. I gave you the percentage of the criteria that you're not meeting. It's 67% that you're not meeting.
It's a high.
I don't think that's funny,
not
because there are so many other resources that could utilize this money. It's not funny.
I think it's important to note, though, that CPA has 3 relatively diverse and distinct funding categories. And sometimes projects meet multiple of those funding categories, and frequently they don't. So
okay, but you are meeting 50% in just your community housing with this project, just 50%. You're not even getting a maximum percentage. 50%. You only meet 2 of the criteria.
Thank you. Any other?
Is there any desire to, I mean,
If you want to do it more, yeah, come on.
Yeah, no, I just want to, again, you know, this is what public, volunteer boards, everybody here to hear and learn. So it was mentioned about Section 8, and Section 8 is a fantastic program for folks who are working, where they pay 30% of their income, and the delta is taken care of by either a state or a federal program. The only Section 8s that would be in this, the low-income housing tax credit program is designed completely separate from Section 8 to create 60% AMI rents and more. So while we will have, and it will apply for some Section 8s to serve very low income, there will be a diversity of incomes, and many of which where there will not be a Section 8 paying that other side. That's what the low-income housing tax credit does, is it provides this other equity so that you can have your rents lower than market. It's true and complicated that in Western Mass, market rents and tax credit rents are sometimes near parity, but it also is true that it costs way more to build housing than the rents at this market would even allow. That's why we have a housing shortage, because it costs too much to build them without this
Hi.
Hi. You can state your name.
My name's Steve Matupski. I'm from 18 Mineral Street in Easthampton. And I lived here since 1977 and since 76, and I bought it in 77. I've been here. So I've owned property in Easthampton for 48 years. I've seen lots of change in Easthampton, from no mayor to our second mayor. And like I've seen, and like I'm putting a different perspective on this, because I see problems in Easthampton, like the traffic. This traffic is supposed to increase the cars by 7,000 cars a day. I remember hearing that, because I followed this Tasty Top project a little bit passively, and I don't agree with it. We're kind of in a drought right now, like really meteorologically in a drought, and like when that water comes up, this Tasty Top project has been proposed in like to be 20 feet away from the Manhan River. The thing is going underwater. It's just like absolutely for sure that's going to happen. The parking at this place, there's like less than 2 cars per place. People are going to be moving in and like they have to have like commercial entities in this project, and there's no place to park. There's no place to deliver the merchandise that's going to be sold there, and like it's a terrible idea. I think Easthampton has a problem. I traveled down 141 pretty often, and it's too narrow. I was scared that I was going to run over somebody getting out of a car on 141 tonight. And like the more traffic and too small, we need parking in Easthampton, not a building for this low income housing. And like this is going to put a real burden on our police station, our fire station, our DPW. It's just enormous what this is going to cost us. My reason for moving to Easthampton was because by fate I ended up there, but I was very attracted to the tax rate in Easthampton, and like very affordable to live here. I grew up in Northampton. I was born in Northampton, and it's just the taxes are just going up and up and up, and we got these projects like between the Main Street project and the Ferry Street project and the Tasty Top project. This is going to cost us so much money. They're going to kick out all the people that grew up here and lived here all their life.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Joe. Scott, do you want to repeat that? Maybe.
Because that didn't get out recorded.
I think, I don't know if it got recorded, but I don't think the remote.
I'm not gonna be able to say it again as eloquently as I know. I'm just kidding. No, just that.
Apparently the video is off as well.
Thank you.
Video's on.
No, I'm hearing from people.
I can see the video. I can see the video.
Joe, did you hear? When was the last time you heard anything?
Just when you said you had to repeat it over again, but it was muted. You could see the microphone with the line through it until just a few minutes ago.
You couldn't hear anything I said.
No.
All right.
We didn't hear anything.
Thank you. The point I wanted to make was that I think there are valid concerns with this project. I think concerns about when we have people are concerned about money going to a private entity. People are concerned about a project that the potential traffic impact. People, we've heard people are concerned about the number of criteria, the CPA that this would address. And I want to just say on behalf of the committee, at least for me, I recognize those concerns, and I think they're real. Also, we have historically not had that many affordable housing projects. We're lucky enough to have had a couple lately, but ideally we would be in a position where we'd be picking the project that was the most ideal, that people would be really looking to develop affordable housing projects in this city. That's not the reality. We have a project that I think that would leverage under $3,000 per unit to provide affordable housing, which would address an urgent need in this city. We need more housing. We need more affordable housing. And so while I recognize the concerns of folks and I want people to feel heard, that's why ultimately I support this project. All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll try to make this motion. I propose that we grant Tasty Top Affordable Housing Project $100,000 for when they finish the last phase, I guess, of the first phase, the last units of the first phase. And I'm not sure what year that is.
Let's look at the project funding agreement. You want to pull up the project funding agreement?
But they don't have a project funding agreement. This is, you mean their application?
Their application, I'm sorry.
You may not know yet because they may not have applied for state funding yet, I think, which was stated at the last meeting.
What is their application?
This is their application.
Go to the cover
So
page of that.
this is state funding winter of 2025.
Here. So,
This little,
yeah. So here we can, but it's actually, but yeah, it's at the completion of that phase.
For the winter of 2025.
Pending completion.
Pending completion.
spring of 26 maybe.
Spring of 26.
Spring of 26.
Spring of 26.
So wait, can you repeat the motion?
Yeah, I propose that we award the Tasty Top Affordable Housing $100,000 for their first phase of their project at the end of 2020, spring of 2026, around spring of 2026.
All right. Second,
I'll second the motion.
all in favor? Aye. Joe?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. You want to pull up the meeting schedule?
No. In one ear, out the other.
Public hearing and disregard what we have to say.
That's the point. Let's just make it a public and then.
Does the CPA want to discuss? Do you want to discuss the
That's gross.
this now?
No.
No.
So what's that? Yeah. Yeah.
So do you want?
So these are the standard dates.
Gross and
Yeah.
stupid.
I'm just gonna pull it up.
For the next round.
Awesome.
So this is the third Thursday. except
Yeah,
for-
but I would just want to enumerate. Craig noticed an error, so I'll fix that.
Okay,
I apologize. I'll bring you another copy of it next time.
yeah, no problem.
So we're gonna.
Oh, good.
We're gonna have to find a data connector.
Okay. So I just wanted to note it for the community and for the committee that we just finished a quarter, right? We just finished second quarter, which is why we're voting today.
Correct.
And per the committee's schedule, as voted upon about a year ago, the grant application submittal deadline for third quarter fiscal 25 is January 2nd, 2025. And so all applications received by January 2nd, 2025 will be reviewed at the January and February meetings. So once we know how many applications there are, I will reach out to applicants and ask if they have a preference between the January and February meeting. And then applicants will pick a meeting and the committee will review some of the applications at the January meeting, some of the applications at the February meeting, ideally, and then vote at the March 20th meeting.
I would just like to state a preference that we encourage people to come at the January or the earliest that they can, assuming the agenda allows. I mean, I think sometimes we do ask for additional information,
Right.
And having the latitude. If they're ready to go January, I don't want to push somebody to a February date unnecessarily. We want to see them as soon as they're ready, so that if we need more information, we call them back.
Okay.
Because ideally, we want to be able to vote on it in March and not be like, hey,
Right.
we're still digesting this. We don't have everything that we need. We're gonna have to punt to another meeting or another.
Right.
quarter.
Also from just a timeliness perspective, assuming that the committee is going to be discussing the budget at the February meeting, that's good timing if we can get the applications in the January meeting.
Not that I'm here, but there was a discussion about updating the plan.
Yeah.
And what would the timing for the committee be in terms of with putting that in with the grant cycle?
Updating the community
On having
preservation
the-
plan.
having the
Correct.
bigger presentation about it.
It'd need to be a presentation about it. I think typically it was always done like,
May or.
yeah, by the end of, like, close to the end of the fiscal year so that it was ready to go for the next fiscal year.
So maybe we aim for April so that we say if you're applying for June, if you're applying for us to vote in June, we're gonna hear those in May. We're gonna consolidate those, hear those in May so that we can vote in June. So, because we're basically setting aside that first one in April for the
First meeting, the first.
first meeting. That will actually be our Community Preservation Act plan presentation. So we're not necessarily hearing applications, but we're hearing from anybody in the community about that, like we did years ago.
I think you used to have big public meetings.
That was the only time we were ever up here.
So was that plan but that plan will be for fiscal 26.
Correct. But it's taking input from the community. We would take input from the community. We would have a draft plan, take input from the community in April, submit things to people that have had it in the past. Like I remember being on the bike path committee. We would actually, I represented the bike path committee to the CPA saying, this is what we're looking at. Basically, and I think it's actually valuable, especially given a quarterly process, to get like sort of just what's on the horizon from our typical stakeholders, like typical applicants, parks, and anybody that we say come and talk to us. Just tell in a way that it doesn't need to be fleshed out. It doesn't need to be like we're
So-
applying, but like what could you be looking at in the future?
So we don't have a plan ready to go.
We have a draft plan
We have a
that's
draft plan.
circulated.
Usually
Okay.
kind of update the plan that
The
we.
plan
had
that's, yeah.
before, And we
Okay.
There
we
would
do
be more updating
engage
probably.
community nonprofits in the city when it comes, especially if the key areas, open space, affordable housing, historic preservation. Those are our mandates, those, like kind of statutorily,
Right.
open space, historic preservation, affordable housing. So
And you engage them to come to the April meeting, or you engage them prior to the draft.
I think traditionally Jamie, actually, the planning department kind of would reach out and solicit input. I don't know if there's some public.
Yes, we'd say like, this is what was drafted.
So it
She
was-
would give what was drafted.
Yeah,
She'd say that, and then what do you think of
She
it?
would redraft
Yeah.
basically using input from the city and from local nonprofits. And we would discuss the draft and have a public forum to have people come and talk about affordable housing and open space and historic preservation and
Okay.
other kinds of community needs.
Cool. Also, I'd like to request that in January, we go downstairs.
Yeah,
That
we'll be
we have,
downstairs
make
in
sure to
January.
put that on the agenda, because I just think it's,
Oh, this would have filled.
no, but it would be fine.
We
We would have people on the perimeter.
Yeah,
It would be
that could have worked. It could have worked. We didn't know. You don't know, right?
Well, there was a meeting that was just getting out.
So that's not.
So do you need a vote on this?
No, I don't think so.
schedule, you're just
I think it's,
reviewing.
it's already
Yeah,
adopted.
I think. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
We adjourn.
Oh, you should actually. Yeah.
Ah!
Come on.
I make
Can
a motion.
can you take back your
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, there you go. All in favor.
Aye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.